market bounce continued today with the S&P 500 up 0.92%, closing at 60.67. The gamma exposure data shows that across all the major indices and index ETFs that we have flipped back into positive gamma exposure territory, with the 6150 and 6200 strikes being the largest gamma exposure concentrations outside of the 0 DTE concentration right here at 6070, which is of course rolling off today. Zooming in here just a little bit into our chart, we've mostly filled the gap from yesterday's sell-off. This is a very interesting juncture as we approach the FOMC announcement and some major earnings reports in tomorrow's trading session.
Thanks, Anthony. I have the VIX pulled up, which spiked almost perfectly, just beyond actually the 22 level that we gave as the upper end of a range that we were watching early this week. And wow, did the VIX sellers come in and crush this thing back down. So we're basically following through on that downside, as you can see here, with the VIX currently at the low 16s. As long as we are above the hole at 1529 on the VIX, my bias is going to be toward the long side for volatility. Now, this could easily be breached tomorrow to the downside with FOMC tomorrow, but this is kind of a line in the sand for me. So 1529. I'll also note that gamma picture has been working for us quite well on the VIX. You know, we hovered around this lower dealer cluster zone for a while. We spiked higher. We went above the upper dealer cluster, and now we're fading. And so if we get back to this 15 again, that's definitely going to be another area to watch, very close to where that whole moving average is that I pointed at earlier. Today, we did see volume. These light blue lines are the daily volume. We saw volume at 18, and we also saw volume at 25. These are just some areas that we're going to be watching as we head into tomorrow.
Thanks, Sean. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if we can fill this gap here and close back down below 15. Next, I want to take a look at NVDA. NVIDIA closed up over 8%, trading a little lower in after hours, now up only 7.5%. But what a huge move from NVIDIA off of these lows just above the 115 level. If you watch yesterday's video, you know we took a position in NVIDIA, obviously doing really well today, which, by the way, if you're interested in following along in our portfolio, you can check out our community Discord absolutely free. I'll put a link down in the description below. And I just want to highlight the big volume that we had coming in at the 120, 125, and 130 strikes, between 400,000 and 500,000 contracts at each of those strikes individually. We still have large gamma exposure at both the 140 and the 150 strike. In our opinion, if we can get above this 130 level and sustain the 140 and 150 strikes, look interesting heading into February. And if we just come down here to our 3D surface model, you can see most of the negative gamma exposure has reduced quite a bit with the big up move, and we've got strikes as high as 130 and 135 for this Friday. You can see the 140 and 150 strikes are growing mostly in the February and March expiration. So that's something we're going to keep an eye on, but early targets for this week and next week are going to be that 130 and 135 strike.
Let's take a look at USO, which we haven't visited recently, but we have come back to this time and again. And you can see, even though gamma is basically neutral, we have this very large noticeable gamma cluster at 82, and most of that is concentrated in February. We also have price that is just recently emerging from this lower dealer cluster zone, and most of the volume is, you know, at this price or higher. We've got volume at 79 all the way up to the 82 strike, which is also the upper dealer cluster zone. And the thing that I wanted to point out from a technical standpoint, just kind of looking at some of the chart indicators that I like to use, we had this really large spike in mid-January, which coincided with the market low. But since then, basically, USO's been trending downward. I just noticed today that it crossed back over the 4-hour whole moving average, also holding this middle Keltner channel using daily Keltner channels. And the Keltners are in an uptrend, so it looks positive for oil. And I want to look for the possibility that this area holds, you know, maybe with 77 being my stop that I'll personally use on the downside. And if so, then we have a clear path potentially up to this 82 level or maybe even higher. So USO is one to keep an eye on, and also a good diversifier.
Thanks, Sean. Let's take a look at Palantir crossing the 80 level yet again. You can see how important this level has been over the last couple of months. We've come all the way back and breached that level again. This is the largest gamma exposure concentration and has been really since November. Volume continues to come in at this level. Over 60,000 contracts traded at the 80 strike just today in the options market. Price has been playing ping pong basically between 70 and 80 now, with slight dips above and below that range, but that's been the basic range of Palantir over the course of the last couple of months. So we do see a little bit of gamma exposure growing at the 85 strike. However, with the largest gamma exposure continuing to maintain at the 80 strike, we think dealer selling pressure will begin to kick in as it has in previous attempts to move above that 80 level. So this is classic gamma exposure behavior where dealers are selling the underlying security as price moves above the largest positive gamma exposure concentration. So in this case here, that level is 80. We think that's going to continue to be a high probability play. The further above 80 Palantir goes, the more likely we will see a rejection. And so even though it's been a wild ride, I think caution is warranted here above the 80 level on Palantir. Moving over to Tesla. Tesla really didn't go anywhere today, basically a flat day. I think everybody's waiting for earnings tomorrow after the bell. That's going to be an interesting one, January 29th after hours. If we take a look at the gamma exposure data, you can see huge speculation in this 500 strike. Tesla attempted to tag that 500 level early on in December, couldn't quite make it before rejecting, and it's really struggled ever since then. But you can see we are kind of coming into a general area of trend support leading up to earnings. Most of the gamma exposure is skewed to the positive side, as you can see here. This is all positive gamma exposure above the 400 strike. So it appears market participants are gearing up for a potentially positive earnings surprise. We'll see if that holds true. We got to remember, when it comes to earnings, the market is not always right. All we can do is judge by the positioning in the options market, and the gamma exposure data shows us where participants are positioned as well as where gamma effects are going to be the strongest. And so if Tesla does have a decent earnings report, a move up to the 450 strike or even 500 in an outlier event is a possibility. And if you guys are interested in accessing our gamma exposure dashboard and our option flow analytics tools, head on over to geeksoffinance.com. You can get $300 off our yearly portfolio manager tier subscription. We're running a limited time offer. Use code WINTER2025 at checkout. We do have a few spots remaining, so take advantage of that while you can. You'll also get access to our community Discord. We've got a ton of great traders in there sharing their own trading strategies, discussing the market every single trading session. You don't want to miss that. Link down in the description below. Thanks so much everybody for watching, and we'll see you guys in the next video.